Good morning, San Diego. All right. We're going to talk about the intelligence revolution. This talk ages fast. This stuff is like fresh fruit. I was updating the slides last night, and they're probably already out of date. I haven't checked the news this morning. If you would like the most current version of the slides, you can get them at wherecanigettheslides.com. All right, let's dig into this. You can't go more than 2 seconds without hearing about generative AI and language models and how AI is going to destroy the future and the planet and stuff, and that's not true. And you're familiar with all the major tools. You should be by now. ChatGPT, for example, OpenAI's tool. You should be familiar with Google's Gemini, which, personal preference, I actually am using this one the most these days. There are tools like, there are things like Google's search generative experiments, which are going to radically wreck anyone who does SEO, so something to be aware of. There are tools like, of course, like Microsoft Bing, now also known as Copilot, which Microsoft is putting into everything. Other language models like Claude, and open source models that run in environments like LM Studio. So this is a lot of stuff. What is this stuff? An important thing to keep in mind when we talk about AI models is a model is just a piece of software. In the same way that Microsoft Word is software written by humans for humans to use, an AI model is AI software written by AI for AI to use. So it's just a terminology thing. And the reason this is important is because now we're getting to a point where you have a choice of what kind of model you want to use based on the task that you're trying to perform. So you'll hear about interfaces like ChatGPT and Bing and Bard. Those are like, the steering wheel, the seats, and the seat warmers in the car. And then there's the models, Claude 2, GPT-4, Palm 2, Stable LM. Clearly, marketers did not name these models. But it's important to know that these things are interchangeable. So what is this stuff? What is a language model or a multimodal model? It begins with a simple concept. You shall know a word by the company it keeps. Every word that we say in language is our understanding was based on all of the words around it. If I say, I'm brewing the tea, for most North American English speakers, you understand that to mean I've got some hot water and some dry leaves, and I'm going to make a beverage. If I change one word in the sentence to another word, all the rest of the words change their meaning too. If I say, I'm spilling the tea, I'm no longer talking about a beverage, right? I'm now talking about gossip. One word changes another, and that's how language models understand and work. They understand based on all the words around them. So how do these things work? Well, here's the unhelpful version that if you haven't had enough coffee, you might panic and flee the room. This is the Transformers architecture built by Google in 2017 as the foundation for all language models today. You don't need to know how this works. What you do need to know is that these things are made by consuming vast, vast amounts of text from the internet and building statistical associations among them. We're talking about 6, 7, 8, 9 petabytes of data. Your laptop, if you have a really nice laptop, your laptop holds about 1 terabyte of data. You would need 7,000 to 8,000 of these laptops just to hold the text of one of these models. If you think of a piece of text, like a web page or an email or an Instagram post, as a pizza, then the way these models work is they're basically cookbooks, right? If you were to go around the world and eat pizza at every single place you could find, every possible pizza, by the end of your journey, you would have two things. One, you would have the most complete cookbook of pizza ever known to mankind, right? Two, you would have severe illness. But when you're done, someone can come to you and say, hey, I've got an idea for a mushroom and pineapple pizza. Is that a good idea? 40% of the room will say no, that no one likes pineapple and pizza. That's fine. But what you could do is you would have enough experience with pizza, every kind, that you could probably come up with something like that. This is an important analogy to understand because people will talk about things like copyright and how these models are trained and what's in them. There are no original works in these models. In the same way, there's no pizza in a cookbook, right? There's ideas about pizza in this pizza cookbook, but there's no real pizza in there. You shouldn't eat any of the pages of it. So how do we talk to these things? How do we make these things work? We do it with a discipline called prompt engineering, which is just a fancy way of saying talk to these things. The chat in ChatGPT is really important because you can have conversations and get them to do things. Again, you shall know a word by the company it keeps. If I write if I have all this content here, I say like maybe we want to reference a prompt about B2B marketing. What it's going to do is it's going to look at its archives, it's knowledge, it's latent space. And it's going to look at every word in my prompt and basically look at the word clouds around that word, every word that's ever been associated with it. And if I said B2B marketing, well, here's B2B. We have markets and transaction and commercial, words that appear around that term. There's marketing, have marketplace, content, digital, product. As you're writing a prompt, what's happening is the models are looking for where the word clouds intersect. Now, this is mathematically a completely wrong explanation, but conceptually it's fine. What does this mean? It means that how you write your prompts matters. If I write a prompt that says, what are the best performing strategies for social media marketing in 2024? That's not a very long prompt. The word clouds around those words and phrases is just not going to be very robust. So what do you get? You get a boring, bland, not very original, not very creative output. And when people say, hey, AI isn't creative, your prompt wasn't creative. Right? Imagine hiring an artist or a writer and giving them that prompt. They'd be like, well, all right, I'll write something. And that's exactly what you get here. If I say, what are the best performing strategies for social media marketing in 2024 for a small business in the B2B marketing space with under 5 employees, exclude using Twitter, or I guess the network formerly known as Twitter. Now we have more focus. Here's some focus platforms. Here's some different ways to use these platforms. I've given the prompt more words, and it creates better word clouds, and the intersections gives us more unique content. If I go all out and I write a 3-paragraph prompt, here's my company, we got a podcast, we got a blog, we got a newsletter, here's our ideal customer, we have these capabilities as marketers, what we can do. When I put that into a model, there's so much relevant information that what it comes up with are your non-traditional things. It says here, hey, maybe you should try things like memification of data science. Or there's one earlier, later on in this thread, that says I should do a React videos on YouTube of people doing bad things with data. That's not a bad idea, right? We went from, hey, you should use Instagram, very bland, to now that we understand the capabilities of your company, here's specific recommendations for you. That's prompt engineering. The more specific the words are that you use in the prompt, the better your performance will be. If you take away nothing else from today, the more relevant words you use in a prompt, the better it will perform. Go home. That's it. We're done. Now, the framework I recommend, and this is one of many, there's who, what, where, and why, and how, and stuff. The one that I recommend is a framework that we call RACE. Role, action, context, execute. For example, I would say you are a Google Analytics certified professional. You know Google Analytics 4, Google Tag Manager, Google Looker Studio, BigQuery. All relevant words, all big word clouds forming up around these things. Your first task is to examine this table of channel grouping data and the overall site composition of site traffic. You're analyzing for marketing channel diversity. Here's a bunch of data right out of my Google Analytics. Analyze the composition of site traffic and provide recommendations in bullet point format for a marketer's next steps to increase traffic. Very specific, lots of words. What do I get? Gemini spits out, here's a lovely breakdown of all your traffic, how it works, and hey, here's a whole bunch of ideas that I have for you on how to improve your website traffic. Develop an influencer outreach strategy, utilize guest posting, participate in relevant online communities, engage with audience-generated content. Lots and lots of things that are specific to that prompt. So you could take that prompt, or one like it, and do that for your own business, right? We have no shortage of data. We have no shortage of data in Google Analytics, in Instagram, and Sprout Social, and all the platforms you use, but you're not using it because you're like, okay, what do I do? Now you have these machines give you a starting point for how to use this data. There's a free download if you go to trustinsights.ai/prompt sheet, nothing to fill out, no forms, etc. That's just a one-page PDF, and if you grab that, download it, print it out, hang it in your cubicle, put it on your dog, whatever. One other important thing, build a prompt library. Using any piece of software that can take plain text, write down your prompts and store them, because what you want to do is you want to be able to improve them over time. You want to be able to share them with other people in your organization, maybe even turn them into products later on, because if you develop a really good prompt, you can actually use that output in a bunch of different ways. I use an app called Joplin. You can use Evernote. You can use OneNote. If you're stuck in the 7th circle of hell, you can use SharePoint. But whatever you use, have this available. Store this. It's valuable. This is your intellectual property. If programming a computer is typing commands into a computer to get a repeatable response, this is your code. This is your source code. All right, let's talk about use cases. Here's the challenge with language models and all generative AI and use cases, and that is that there's an infinite number of them. Because name a function in your company that does not use language. Right? Everyone, from the mailroom clerk to the corner office, is using language in some capacity. So we have use case categories. There's 6 of them. Generation, extraction, summarization, rewriting, classification, and question answering. And we're going to look at some examples of these. But it's important to have these categories in mind, because if you have a task that you're saying, should I use AI for this? If it fits in one of these 6 categories and it's a task that involves language, then a language model is a great use. If it's a task that involves images, then an image model will be good to use. And there are some things that there isn't a good fit for AI for today. So let's start with generation. Everybody knows generation. Write me a blog post, write me a social media post, write me an Instagram post, a LinkedIn post, you name it. Very common, and use good prompts to generate better stuff. It isn't just marketing stuff, it's any language. So for example, I was working with a client not too long ago, and they said, hey, we've got this new website up, we need a privacy policy, can you write one? I said, I am not a lawyer. However, I can take the list of technologies that you use on your website and say, synthesize a privacy policy for me. And of course, the machines do that. And then I hand it to a human lawyer who vets it, because you never, ever, ever just hand machine output to the public without vetting it through a lawyer, at least if it's high risk. And the lawyer looked at it and said, this is good. Okay, you were good to go. Right? So I can generate other stuff. They can code. They can code really well. So if you are not a coder and you need to have code written, these tools can do it. Anyone work in financial services, like at a bank? Oh, do any of you still have mainframes? Yeah. You know that last COBOL programmer who retired 15 years ago? If you have COBOL still, these can write COBOL. You can actually maintain your archaic mainframe with this. The IRS would probably benefit from this, because their mainframes are still from 1963. I'm not kidding. So they can code. Anything that you can think of, they can code. For example, I wanted a plugin on my blog that said, hey, this article you're reading is over a year old. And I went into the WordPress codex, and there's a bunch of plugins. They're all like, hey, for $14.99, you can have our service. I'm like, it's a banner. I don't need to pay $15 a month for a banner. So I said, hey, language model, let's write a WordPress plugin. I don't know how to write one, but you probably do. So it said, okay, here's the scaffolding, here's the framework. I said, let's fill in the code for what I want to do. Tested it, it broke a few times, tested it until it got it right. And what happens? I can take this thing and put it on my blog, and it works. Right? In about an hour's time, I got a working WordPress plugin to do what I wanted it to do. There was another plugin I used to use that was great. It would allow me to insert codes on my website. The developers stopped supporting it 6 years ago. I'm like, well, that no longer works. Guess what? With the help of a language model, we resurrected it, updated it, and now I can keep using it. If you are paying for a piece of software today that does something relatively straightforward and you're pretty sure it's not worth what you're paying for, ask a language model if you can you write your own version of it with it. There's a good chance you can. Second set of tasks, extraction. You have data. How do I get data out of something? For example, I went onto a page, I went to Netflix's jobs page, and I said, okay, extract for me all the job listings on this page, and it pulled out, marketing associate and manager and marketing partnerships. So I was able to take data from one location and pull it out and do something else with it. What I did with it is I said, okay, we know companies put up jobs for stuff they're hiring for that's important to them. So tell me what Netflix's corporate strategy is based on the jobs that you just extracted. And it came up and said, hey, Netflix is focused on global expansion. That's true, they talked about it in their earnings call. Emphasis on social media marketing, they're hiring a lot for that. Content creation, building partnerships. There is so much data you have access to right now that if you just use these tools to gather it up, you can ask questions, you can extract that information. In my hometown, our police department publishes police logs in like arcane PDF formats. I'm like, hey, extract this out, turn it into a spreadsheet so I can analyze it. Things like legislation, the Informed Consumers Act, which came out last year. This regulates aspects of social media marketing. How many people have read the Informed Consumers Act? Yeah, it's compelling reading. No, it's not. I said, here's the text. Extract what's important about this for me, please. And it spits out, here's what you need to know as a social media marketer. Right? I just wanted the parts that are relevant to me. I don't want to read the whole thing. And of course, it comes up with that, which is very, very nice. Another example, my martial arts teacher has all these great reviews on Google Business. They're like 4 and 5-star reviews. And he's like, I need to write some Instagram content. I don't know what to write. I said, well, let's extract the information from Google Business and say, now you create Instagram copy and photo suggestions from these 4 and 5-star reviews. And it works really well. Why? We're using the voice of the customer. Right? We're using real people's words in Instagram copy, which resonates more with what other people are looking for. Because as marketers, we will tend to say, oh, our tool is the best, scalable, flexible, turnkey, whatever. It's not the words that real people use. So we can use these language models to take the data we have, extract it, and put it into language, into new content. Third category, summarization, turning big text into little text. My favorite use by far, as an agency owner, as an agency day-to-day person, I am on a lot of conference calls. How many other people enjoy conference calls? Yeah, all right. Sometimes I've had enough conference calls in a row, I don't remember what I said. So what I do is I say, here's the transcripts, automated transcripts from these conference calls. Extract my action items. Just tell me what I said, what did I promise to do. There are tools like Otter, for example, that have this built right in. Suddenly I can stop being bad at customer service because I can remember what I said, and the tools are phenomenal for processing that data. By the way, if you get in the habit of recording and capturing your information, even internal calls and meetings, you can also say, hey, let's de-identify and anonymize this stuff, and maybe make a blog post or two out of a key concept we talked about in our weekly meeting, right? If you want to create more content at scale and you don't want to sit down and literally just create it from scratch, you're already creating content. Every minute of every day, you are creating content, whether you know it or not. Use these tools to convert it into useful formats. Another example, I took 20 interviews from the leaders of this organization and said, summarize this down into one mission statement. And the tools did a great job of it, boiled it down to something very simple. Strategic consulting is really one of the great uses of these tools. Another example, in restaurant reviews, I extracted 500 reviews of this restaurant. This is a synthetic example because I couldn't use the live data. But I said, hey, here's all these restaurant reviews and the star ratings. Tell me the 3 things that this company does well, 3 things it does poorly, and 3 recommendations for what to do better. And it looks through all the reviews, it reads all the things people say, and spits out recommendations, right? Just summarizing all of those reviews down to something much more compact. I like to watch YouTube. I imagine a lot of people do. There's a lot of good professional development information on YouTube, but unfortunately, there's lots of it, right? In November, Google rolled out a big search algorithm change, and I was like, well, do I really want to watch 20 hours of people's opinions about this change? No, I really don't. So we downloaded all the videos, transcribed them using AI, and I said, now summarize. Just give me the high points of all 30 hours of this video because I don't want to watch this. And it spits out a bunch of stuff, and there's like 2 or 3 things that I didn't know on here out of 30. I saved myself 30 hours of tripe because I used machines instead. And if you're using Google's Gemini system, you can now do that. Say, hey, here's this at YouTube. Give me a summary of this talk. And what it does is it reads the YouTube video and pulls all the data out and says, hey, here's what this is about. The speaker, Katie Robert, is the CEO of Trust Insights, a management agency that uses AI to help businesses make better decisions. Katie and Brooke are in the back room there if you want to. They're famous now. All right. So summarization is taking big stuff and shrinking it down to little stuff. If there's a video that you see, maybe there's a conference video, like, do I really want to watch this for an hour? No. At YouTube, give me a summary, and you'll be done in 5 minutes. Fourth, rewriting. These tools are exceptionally good at changing language into different forms of language. I got this NDA from this guy, and I read this thing, and I was like, were you drunk? Did you copy and paste it off of Reddit? What happened here? It turns out both things were true. And I said, let's rewrite this. So rewrite this to be a proper NDA. The tool went through, it fixed it all up, and it spit it out, and it handed that to my lawyer. My lawyer's like, okay, great, you can sign this version. Thank God you didn't sign the other version. So we can rewrite things, turn bad text into good text. They are phenomenal professional development and training tools. If you are ever faced with a situation where you don't understand something, ask a tool to explain it to you in a context you understand. In language models, there's this concept of model parameters and model weights, and there's a bunch of math that goes with it. However, I did really badly in math in school. This is why I spend time with computers, because they do math. And I said, explain these terms to me in terms of pizza. And I said, hey, your model parameters are the variety of toppings on a pizza. Your model weights are how much of each topping there is. Like, oh, now I understand the concept. Any concept that you don't understand, these tools can explain it to you in the circle of fifths, or the back nine on a golf course, or pizza, whatever your thing is. These tools can rewrite into that. So if you're ever in a meeting or at a conference and you're like, oh, somebody just said something, I have no idea what. Open up the app of your choice, ask it to explain it to you, and boom, you've got the concept back. So there's professional development tools. So rewriting. Here's a memo. Bob, you sent over 2 months of invoices in 1 day. Of course it's not done. It's not going to be done anytime soon because this stuff takes time. And if you needed it soon, you shouldn't have let it sit on your effing desk for 2 weeks. You can F right off and you'll get it when you get it. Go F yourself, Karen in accounting. Rewrite this memo in a professional tone of voice. Dear Bob, I hope this message finds you well. If you've ever not sure how to say something, just give it to the tool in the raw format. If you're ever going to write a memo that's going to get you fired, have a tool rewrite it. Your job will thank you. That's rewriting. Classification. These tools can classify data really well. I took all of the Instagram posts from the last year that was up on Netflix's website, Netflix's Instagram account, and I said, hey, let's do some topic modeling and sentiment analysis. I want you to analyze all these Instagram posts that Netflix made and give me a table. Classify this data. So it goes through and it says, hey, here's the sentiment for every post on Netflix's Instagram account. Now I can pair that with things like likes and comments and understand what topics or what sentiment resonates the most. So I could, if I was working for them as a brand, I could say, here's what the tone that you need to take. Right? So these tools can classify. And then when I was done, I said, now give me this in a file I can download. So think about all the social media data you have, how these tools can do sentiment analysis, topic modeling, summarization, condensing big data down to little data so that you can go analyze it some more. And lastly, question answering. Answering questions of data. These tools are good at answering questions generally. I said, hey, let's dig into some specific, measurable, and uncommon YouTube content strategies for trust insights. And it said, hey, do a demystifying AI and data science thing, or a Mythbusters AI edition. Like, that would be kind of cool. Those are good answers that it's drawing from its own knowledge. But where these tools really shine is when you give them data. Right? You say, hey, here's an NDA, review it. I care about fairness. The NDA should be bilateral. And what it will say is, here's the things that are fair, here's the things that are unfair. If you've ever, as a marketer, had to put together an RFP or read RFPs, which is a bundle of fun, you can say, here are the 5 things I care about in this RFP. Here's the response from this agency with their 88-page deck, and talk about the lake in front of their office. Nobody cares. The 5 things I care about, does this deck answer that? And the answer will be yes or no. These tools can crunch through paperwork like crazy. They can do data analysis. This is ChatGPT's advanced data analysis. Someone the other day had said, hey, food prices have doubled since the pandemic. And I said, is that really true? The Economist has what's called the Big Mac Index. They look at the price of the Big Mac in every country over 20 years. And I ran it through and I said, well, is that actually true? And only in Argentina is that true. Everyone else, food prices have gone up about 22%. So if you have data and you're like, I want to analyze this, but I don't know how, I don't know what type of statistical analysis to run, ask the tool. Here's the data, ask the tool, and you'll get good answers to your questions. They can see. So here is my homepage on my website, and I said, you are a UI UX expert. Tell me what to do to improve my website's user experience. And it gave me a long list of everything I've done wrong. That sucked. But it's not wrong. It's not wrong. And as a result, you think about the things that you're putting up. Hey, here's some visual content or some stills from TikTok or thumbnails on YouTube. Which of these thumbnails is most visually appealing? Right? And have it give you visual advice. So when should we use these tools? Because they seem like they're pretty useful. We used to have this really long flow chart, but now the answer is all the time. All the time. There's a study done by BCG, the Boston Consulting Group, with Wharton Business School that said they took 700 consultants, divided them up into 2 camps, and said half the camp you're going to use AI, half the camp you're going to perform these tasks without AI. The consultants that used AI finished 12% more tasks, completed them 25% faster, and produced 40% higher quality than those without. And what's astonishing about this is that this happened within 5 hours of using these tools. And the people who are bottom half performers, I don't know what happened there, but that's fine. The people who are bottom half performers, when they looked at the study, said, and the people who were bottom performers using AI became as skilled and as powerful as the performers, the top performers who did not have AI, right? Which is just a huge, huge change. So the answer to the question of whether you should use AI or not is use it all the time. There's another study done in Nature magazine in about August, September last year, where they said, we're going to give you some creative thinking, divergent thinking, creativity. Oh yeah, I know that the slides aren't working. The whole thing's kind of green screen, which is kind of cool. We're just going to go on without them. We don't need them. I said, here's some creative tasks. And they had AI run them. And it turns out that on average, AI was more creative than people. And the reason for this is not because the machines were somehow superior, it's just that there's a whole bunch of people with really bad ideas. Right? So use AI all the time. We have a framework for adopting AI called the 5 Ps. Purpose, what is the task you're trying to automate with AI? People, who are the people involved and the skills they'll need? Process, what is the process for that task today? The platform, which AI tool should you use? And then performance, how do you measure whether you've been successful or not? So using this framework for every single process you want to use with AI, you can use this framework for it. These things are not all sunshine and roses, there are problems. So let's talk about some of those problems really quickly. Number one, they are biased. Remember, they're trained on the entirety of humanity's public knowledge on the internet. Humanity, sometimes not great. In OpenAI's warning card, we found that our models more strongly associate European American names with positive sentiment when compared to African American names and negative stereotypes with black women. If you have a chatbot powered by OpenAI, and you interact with your chatbot, and I use my American name, and I use my Korean name, am I going to get the same service? I should. Will I? The answer is maybe, maybe not, because these tools have biases, so you have to plan to counteract those biases. Issues with copyright. On the intake side, there are 7 cases now that are starting to march through the courts about whether all of the data that these companies use is fair use or not. We will not know the answer to this question in the USA for 3 to 4 years or however long it takes for the lawsuits to work out. In places around the world, it's different. So if you're in the EU, anyone here from the EU? All right. You just ratified the EU AI Act, right? One of the things there is they do not allow training data to be used in copyrighted works. On the other side of the planet, Japan says, yes, that is fair use. So you can come and train your models in Japan. So it's kind of a mess. On the output side, in most jurisdictions, except for 5 of them, machines cannot hold copyright. There's a famous case in 2018, Naruto versus Slater, when a chimpanzee took a selfie, and they took it to court, and the court said, hey, chimpanzee did the work, not the photographer, therefore, and chimpanzees can't hold copyright, therefore, it's in public domain. That has extended to AI. So if you write an outline and ChatGPT writes the blog post, that is not copyrightable. It is immediately in the public domain. If ChatGPT writes the outline and you, the human, write the blog post, that is copyrightable because you, the human, did the work. So it's important to know that machines cannot hold copyright. Machine-made outputs cannot hold copyright. They do hallucinate. That is by design, which means that they will come up with statistically correct answers that are factually wrong. And no machine, no model will ever be 100% correct about anything because that is just not how they work. So that's a consideration as you deploy these technologies. How are they using your data? Who's using your data? The golden rule is if you ain't paying, you are the product and so is your data. So if you have people in your company who are using the free versions of things because they could not get approval to buy it, your company's data is being used to train models. Right? So you have to know that unless you're paying, your data is the product that's being given to these companies. So the important takeaway there for anyone who's a business owner or manager is you should probably, A, know what employees are doing with generative AI, and B, they're going to use it anyway, so you probably have to start paying for it. These tools can create problems. For example, there was a deep fake phone call using 11 Labs recently that was being used for voter suppression in the USA. Another example, Taylor Swift was dealing with non-consensual fake imagery. Now, thankfully, Taylor Swift has more firepower than an entire continent, so there's regulation occurring about this right now, and it stands a good chance of passing. But know that these tools can be used unethically. And as I mentioned, For anyone in the room who ever interacts with the EU in any way, shape, or form, including EU visitors to your website, if you are using AI, you must comply with the EU AI Act, which is like GDPR for AI, for those who remember that fun back in 2018. 5 things to know about the EU AI Act. Number 1, deter the use of disallowed cases of uses of AI, things like facial recognition, just not allowed. Detect the uses of high-risk AI, so things like using it to do loan decisions, for example, is a very high-risk category. You've got to know that that's going on in your company. The EU AI Act does not permit ignorance in a court case. You must document the use of AI wherever it is you're using it in your company. You must disclose the use of AI anytime it faces the public. So, if you put up a blog post on LinkedIn with an AI-generated image, you should disclose in that post that that is the AI-generated image. Now, we'll know that anyway because the person's got like 5 arms and they're drinking tea through their forehead. But you have to disclose the use of AI anytime you're using it, but especially in any kind of customer care example. So if you have a chatbot on your website and someone is talking to that chatbot, they have to be told clearly they are interacting with a machine. And finally, the EU says, defend the rights of individuals. So in a choice between corporate rights and individual rights, the EU will almost always come down on the right of the individual. So if there's any kind of case that you're dealing with where someone's individual rights may have been hampered by AI, you will be held liable for it. By the way, I'm not a lawyer, so just clear. So how's this going to impact marketing? Well, a few different ways. One of the big ones is, in a recent study, I want to say this one, I don't remember which one this was, it was from Sloan School of Management at MIT. They had consumers exposed to different kinds of messaging, 5 ads and then 5 sort of cause-related messages. And they were written partly by AI, mostly by AI, or not at all by AI. What that study found that was shocking was that consumers are not in any way, shape, or form dissuaded by the use of AI. If you disclose it, there is no difference in preference. There was actually, when it was not disclosed, people preferred AI content to human content for ads and cause-related messaging. When it was disclosed, it was even. So that's kind of a very surprising finding. Second, if anyone does any kind of search marketing, these AI-based summaries of search, which you get from Bing and now from Google, or AI-based search engines like Perplexity, for example, or just talking to ChatGPT, is going to, by a recent study in search engine land, said an 18 to 64% loss in organic search traffic. The best case scenario was an 18% loss in organic search traffic. So if you go into your Google Analytics and you say, hey, what percentage of our leads come from organic search, that's at risk. And there's 2 types of organic search, right? There's branded and unbranded. Branded is people searching for your company by name. I ask the tool, hey, what do you know about my company? Trust Insights. And all these tools come up with different answers. That is probably not going to change too much. What is going to change is when we talk to these tools and ask them, give me some ideas about social media marketing, right? If you're a social media marketing agency that relies on the unbranded search, people finding your content, they're not going to find it anymore because these tools will just give them summaries that requires no additional work. The person doesn't have to check your website or read your blog or go to your YouTube channel. They get the answer and they're happy. Like, this is great. I got what I wanted. I don't have to do a whole lot of extra work. Your assignment is to go into your Google Search Console data and look at what percentage of your search traffic is unbranded versus branded. If your unbranded traffic is more than 50%, you are at risk from generative AI. How do you fix that? Well, there's 3 antidotes. Number 1, be everywhere. Literally, say yes to everything, right? If someone asks you to be on their podcast, say yes to it. Be a guest on the YouTube channel, collab on an article, share stuff on Instagram Reels. Whatever it is, say yes to it because you need to have your brand and your messaging in text on as many places on the internet as possible. If you're a guest on someone's podcast and they don't put up a transcript, make a transcript, put it on your own blog, and just make sure that you are every place you possibly can be. You are going to upend your PR strategy. Instead of going for the New York Times or the South China Morning Post or Al Jazeera, go for like the East Peoria Evening News, because if you can get 1,000 articles of small publications about you on the internet, you'll do much better than 1 article in a big publication, because to a language model, all the text is the same. So be as in many places as you possibly can. Send press releases. I know it sounds really weird to say. I used to work in PR, and we're like, yeah, press release is not that big a deal. But it turns out when you send a press release, it gets syndicated like hundreds of places online. No one ever reads them, so don't expect any traffic from them. But what you're doing is you're training models that use news sources for their data. Second, have some way to talk to people that does not involve AI. An email newsletter, a text messaging line, hell, even direct mail, right? Sending postal stuff to people's houses. Anything that doesn't involve a machine in the way is really important. You heard Mike talk about that in the keynote this morning, how important newsletters are now to just to hold on to the audience that you have. And have a community. Again, some place that is not moderated by AI. This is our Analytics for Marketers community. It's on Slack. Discord. If I had to pick a network to start a community on these days, I would pick Discord because it's much better built for communities and there's no AI in the way. All right. How do we prepare our careers for AI? This is the question that everybody has on their minds. Who's going to lose their jobs? The answer to this question is not a simple question. The Brookings Institute likes to say we'll take away jobs, take away tasks, but not jobs. And that's true for the most part. However, let's go back to 1762. There used to be a profession called spinster. These were people who would take raw fiber and spin it into thread, right? It was a profession mostly by women back then, hence the term spinster. In 1762, the spinning jenny was invented, which was essentially 10 spinning wheels in one. And suddenly the profession of spinster just went away, because the machine was automating the process now to a much greater degree. Some people kept their jobs. Those who were willing to make change adopted the new machine and were 10 times more productive, and other people had to find different work. The same thing is happening with generative AI. It's taking on all of these tasks, doing them better and faster and cheaper. And so our role now is to how do we adapt to this? This was in May 2nd, the Writers Guild of America strike started at noon, and a person said, just got my first inquiry from a studio needing a writer to use some AI to write dialogue, in case anyone is curious how quickly this is becoming a problem. The studios waited 14 minutes into the strike before starting to ask, let's put AI in place of writers. At the end of the day, what's going to happen is that you are going to pivot from being an individual practitioner, so the first violin, into the conductor of the orchestra. Right? You're the one now managing the machines. And literally, this is the future. If you are not managing the machines are managing you, or you're not managing anything. So you have to become a conductor of the machine orchestra. So what's next? What's around the corner? There's some really interesting things happening in AI. There's a whole architecture called mixture of experts, which is instead of having one model do something, there's now sort of 8 or 9 or 10 different models all collaborating under the hood, like little miniature offices. And these tools are capable of assembling much better quality content for much lower cost and much fewer requirements. This is a comparison between an open model on the left and ChatGPT, the free version, on the right. The quality of work is the same. What's important is the model on the left runs on a gaming laptop. The model on the right needs a room full of servers. That's how fast the technology is evolving and scaling, to the point where you are going to be running language models on your phones by the end of this year. Apple's already got a toolkit ready. Android has several, and of course Gemini runs on here, but you'll be running models on these devices by the end of the year. Google's new Gemini model just announced it's a mixture of experts model. It's really, really powerful. So they're scaling the power of these things to the point where Gemini will be able to take in 1 million tokens at a time for input. Translated, that's 700,000 words. Right? So it could take a bookshelf as a prompt. You shouldn't, but it could. There are new architectures, one called Mamba, that we are paying very close attention to, that promises to be much, much faster than today's transformers. And these tools are getting crazy multimodal. So here's an example. This is some Stable Diffusion, which came out with their text-based image prompt. And all it does is, you look through it, and it can create incredible stuff, 5 or 6 seconds of video. Then last week, we had OpenAI's Sora. This is completely generated by machine. There was not a single bit of reality in there. It's all machine generated. Right? It's to the point where people are starting to go, well, how is this going to impact things like historical record if we can basically make new versions of history? There are models. This is an example from Facebook.
I've led movies, features.
Yes, weren't you in that feature last year? You were like the main supporting. I mean, not lead, but you were supporting to the main. That was.
Yeah. That was me.
So what they did there was they took an audio track and they synthesized the people. Those people don't exist. And so they were able to take an audio track and turn it into a video. Think about it like doing podcasts and doing short form videos and reels and stuff on TikTok. What if you just didn't have to do that? You just say, I'm going to give it a prompt and I'm going to have it generate these kinds of interactions. And these things are occurring in real life, so they're not just in your computer. This is an example of Boston Dynamics Spot hooked up to a language model.
May I have the pleasure of knowing your names?
I'm Matt, and that's Vache.
A pleasure to meet you, Matt and Vacha. Shall we commence our journey? The charging stations where Spot robots rest and recharge is our first point of interest. Follow me, gentlemen.
I like that they had to give it a hat. Think about being able to talk to a robot after it's done its safety inspections or after it's gone through a specific area and not have to figure out what language to speak. You just talk to it. Like this prompting, these use of language models is occurring in every domain, and these models are getting so powerful that real-world robots can learn and adapt in their circumstances. And finally, these things are showing up everywhere. Photoshop has it now, Illustrator has it now, Adobe Premiere, Unity Games. Pretty much any piece of software that has any level of complexity whatsoever will have generative AI in it, which means that whether you want it to or not, it's coming to your workplace. Right? So you have to get good at this stuff. If you have a machine that can run Call of Duty and not hiccup, you have a machine that can run a lot of these models on your computer. No, you don't even have to work with a provider. Right? That's how prevalent these things are. So some final thoughts in our last couple of minutes here. If you were getting started today on a series of tasks, this is the bare bones basic tools that I would recommend starting with. For tasks where you have under 8,000 words, use ChatGPT, Mixtral, Gemini for tasks over 8,000 words. So no matter what task you're trying to perform, this is the basic starter kit. And you'll notice there aren't any vendors on here. We got a hall of great exhibitors outside, but there's no vendors on here because you need to get good at the base models first and understand how AI works first before you can take advantage of all the stuff that people are building out in the exhibit hall. The future, your future, is going to be dictated by two things. Number one, it's going to be dictated by the quality and quantity of the data you have, right? Because you are going to be using these tools with your data. And so the more of it that's better quality that you have, the better you're going to do. And second, your future is going to be dictated by the quality and quantity of ideas you have. Because skill is no longer an obstacle. Right? These tools level the playing field on a lot of different professions. So it's up to you and your humanity and your creativity to create high quality and high quantity great ideas and let the tools build from that. Those are the two factors that are going to be success or failure for you and your company in the months and years to come. So if you're interested, we have a free book that you can download and a not at all free course that you can take because this talk is like 8 hours. But thank you very much, Social Media Marketing World, for having me here, and enjoy the rest of the show.
All right, good time. Is that some great stuff or what? If you guys have questions, Chris will take.